I'm going to be doing a video series on what I do to hand load. It's purely going to be like details on how I've figured out how to do it over the years that works best for me. I don't do some things that some guys do when they're looking for really extreme levels of accuracy. I don't neck turn, for instance. I've never really found the need to. If I buy high quality brass like Lapua, anything like that, Alpha, ADG, I don't even uniform the primer pockets. I haven't found it to be necessary. Lapua, for instance, with my 300 Norma brass, I ran the uniformer into the primer pockets. It never even scraped. They were pretty much all uniform to begin with. Same with flash hole deburring. If I buy Lapua brass because they're a drilled primer pocket, I believe Norma also drill the primer pockets. I'm not sure about Alpha and ADG, but it's not necessary to uniform the flash holes on them. My Creedmoor loads, I use Hornady brass purely because it's cheap and readily available. That stuff, it does need to have the primer pockets and flash holes uniformed. On one batch that I had, the 6.5 Creedmoor brass from Hornady, I actually genuinely thought I was going to detonate primers just seating them into the cases. They were that tight and the pockets were that shallow. I actually broke the safety glasses out, which I know you should be doing anyway, but I normally don't do. So just a quick recap, it'll be stuff that I do and I'll try and have it in sequence. It will be filmed over multiple days, it could even be weeks, depending on how pressed I am to get this 300 Norma ammo loaded, because it will be what I'm loading in the test videos. I have the powder, primers and projectiles to do a loading series on that. When I do it, I'll do say 5 to 10 cases per step that I perform on video. The rest will be performed off video, or off camera, sorry. And then I'll put it all together in the process that I do it, in the order that I do it. I've already filmed some today, which was the annealing step. I do that first, I anneal, then I lube, run them through the full length sizing die, then tumble to clean the cases. I don't actually tumble before I full length size at all, because usually my cases are pretty clean. Even if I'm in the field, I'm usually not hunting in muddy or dirty conditions, anything like that. So they don't really need to be cleaned off that much before I run them into the die. The only thing they really have on them is a little bit of carbon around the necks from where the case obturates against the chamber walls. So once it's full and sized, I tumble them, like I said. When they come out of the tumbler, I wipe the dust off because I'm dry tumbling. You get that green, I use the green corn cob. It has that green dust that it leaves over the cases, which actually you really have to wipe off. It's not just, you can't just run them over a rag, you actually have to really wipe it off them. Once I've done that, I trim, chamfer deburr, clean primer pockets. Then I'm on to priming. Once they're all primed, I'll charge with powder, then seat projectiles, and then if it's just ammo that I'm loading, that's the end of it. But if I'm doing a load development, I then mark them, and I think I've said in a previous video, I use a numbering system. Like I'll write down my charges on my mobile phone and I'll assign a number to each charge or a number to each seating depth for the test, and then I'll mark them up like that, put them in a loading ammo box, then take them to the range and shoot them. Okay, I think that pretty much nails the overview for this upcoming video series. Okay guys, this is the annealing step of my reloading process. It's pretty much the first step that I take after having fired brass. I don't tumble it, bring it straight back and I anneal it. with the amp annealer, which is pretty easy and fast. I'll only do a few for the purposes of this video, just to show you how I do it. I've previously run the Aztec mode, analysed my cases. Got the custom coated Viscopur brass. From here, we'll go to lubing, then full length sizing, and then from full length sizing it'll go through the tumbler. And that is my process for the sizing portion. I anneal it before the sizing just to make everything consistent, which helps with the amount of spring back the brass has after it's sized. Helps getting consistent bump on the shoulder as well. Okay, we're back at the next step of the reloading process. So we've annealed. Now I'm going to lube and then size these cases. So I'm going to hit some cases with the Hornady one-shot case lube. I get all four sides. And I also like to spray the inside of the die. You can't see it on camera either, but I have my tumbler sitting up on an ammo box here under the bench. And then once I size the case, I throw the case into the tumbler, ready to be tumbled. I'll see you back once I've got the die set up for sizing. Okay, we're back at your sizing. Basically just take a case, sit it in the four-stick cook drawers, hold it down for 3 seconds, back up, into the tumbler. Just repeat as needed till all cases are done. Okay. That's probably enough of them on video, so I'll see you back for the next step of the process. Okay, I've got all 99 cases in the tumbler now. I'm going to add some more media on top of the cases, and then I'll turn it on and run it for maybe 2 to 3 hours. I'm not going to do that currently because it's almost 2 AM where I am. I've just got home from work and started shooting this and doing some reloading. So I'll pick it back up tomorrow, hopefully, if I get around to it. Okay guys, we're back after tumbling the brass. As you can see, it's substantially cleaner now, but we have to make sure there's none inside, and we also have to get any bits that are stuck in the flash hole out of the flash hole. So what I normally do, I just give it a decent wipe with a rag, put the rag down, and I just have an old hex key here which I don't use. And I just use that hex key to knock the stuff out of the primer pockets. That's that one done. On to the next one. This is a pretty slow, laborious process, but it has to be done. Because like I said, these cases actually end up covered in like tumbling dust quite badly. And they have to be cleaned off. If you don't wipe them off good, then what you end up with is the tumbling powder on your hands, which contains a chemical I believe is called lead styphenate, It's a chemical from the priming compound from when the primers detonate, and it's very toxic. It can lead to lead poisoning and cause cancer and a host of other things. Like I said, I'll do 10 or so of these on camera. Forgive the movement of the camera, I have it attached to my head, as it's probably the easiest way to film this portion of the video series. There we go, another one done. Wipe him off. Check there's none in the flush hole, which there wasn't on that particular one. And that one's the next one. I have considered going to wet tumbling. However, you're just adding an extra step of having to dry the cases in to your reloading process, which I don't believe really, I don't believe the benefit's that great. Like, by the time you've done this, I'm pretty sure the extra time added in of having to dry cases brings you out even time wise in the process. It's basically the only advantage the wet tumbling really gives you is it cleans the primer pockets for you as well. Okay, this is the last one that I'll do on camera. Then I'll turn the camera off, get the rest of these done, and then we'll pick it up at the next step, which will be probably trimming. I think I'll do trimming and then the primer, cleaning the primer pockets. So I'll trim, chamfer, deburr, then clean the primer pockets. I'll trim in one step, then I'll chamfer, deburr, and clean the primer pockets in another step, because I have a Lyman auto case prep center, which makes it very easy to just go from one to the next and then flip it over and do the primer pocket as well. Okay, I'll see you at the next reloading step. Okay guys, we're back for the trimming operation. This is pretty much how I do it. I have a Forster original trimmer here. I've set the length from the 300 Norma Magnum. Just put a case in, turn it until I feel it stop cutting, and that one's done. Then put another case in. Notice how I insert the cutter head and then lock the collet down. That helps ensure that there's a straight cut on the case mouth, as it helps the case align to the cutter head before it's locked down. Pull it out, switch to the next one, and we're good to go. And away we go. Some of these are barely touching, but it's still, I can still see how it's squaring off the case now. I'm going to move these a little bit closer so they're easier to reach. As soon as I've got 10 done, I'll switch the camera off again. And we'll then see you at the next step, which will be chamfer, deburr, and cleaning the primer pocket. Okay, we're back at the chamfering, deburring and primer pocket cleaning stage. You probably can't see it on the camera, but the primer pockets are dirty after being fired. Dry tumbling doesn't clean the primer pockets like wet tumbling would with stainless steel media. Okay, let's get started. This is the Lyman Case Prep Center. I can't remember its exact name. Basically it's just automated. You got your chamfer, actually what is it, chamfer or deburr, and primer pocket cleaner. I've got a primer pocket uniformer on there, but I won't use that, I'll just use the cleaner. And I usually run the cases over the neck brush as well. just to get a bit of carbon out of the inside of the necks. Like I said, I'll do 10 or so on camera, and then I'll do the rest off camera. And then after this, we'll be up to the priming stage. So let's get to it. Priming pocket's now clean, rail chamfered and deburred. One thing to keep in mind with these automated centers like this, they turn a lot faster than if you were just using a hand tool and just doing like a sort of half turn each way. So you really just got to hit them on there real quick and get them off, otherwise you'll thin out the necks at the very edge of the case, and then you're very likely to start splitting cases, even if you're annealing each firing like I am. This process, just like any other, you sort of get a flow to it, you start getting a rhythm going, and then you can go through quite a few cases fairly quickly. An automated center like this really speeds up the process. Funny, reloading can be as cheap as you want, or you can invest in time-saving equipment like this, and then it starts getting very expensive quickly. But as soon as you start shooting anything out of a normal, like 223, 243, 308, those sort of cartridges, you actually start saving money fairly quickly, especially here in Australia. Components and loaded factory ammo are quite expensive compared to other places around the world. You basically pay a premium. So even with expensive equipment, you'll pay for the equipment within 1,000 rounds shooting something like the 300 Norma Magnum. Okay, that's enough on camera. We'll pick it back up at the priming stage. I'm back here about to do the priming part of the reloading process. I've just put some primers in the tray. I've just flipped it to active. I can now feed some into the actual priming tool. Let's get going. Always just check that the primers are seated slightly below flush, and then we're good to go. I'll do, say, 10 of these on camera, and then we'll be back at the next process, which will be powder charging. It's pretty quick, especially with one of these tools that holds a bunch of primers at once. I had to buy this priming tool specifically for the 300 Norma Magnum. My Lee priming tool, which I used for the 6.5 Creedmoor, wouldn't work. It has a body which comes up around the shell holder, and while I could slide the shell holder into the tool, I couldn't get the case in around the body because the body protrudes in around the shell holder itself. I didn't want to have to grind away the body at all to fit the cases in there. Okay, that's probably enough for this step of the process, so I'll see you back here when I'm putting powder in the cases. Okay, we're back. We're about to start the powder charging portion of the reloading process. I've just set the RCBS charge master light going, dispensing the first charge. So we'll get to it after this. Normally I'd charge a case and then seat a projectile, but for the purposes of this, I'll charge a few cases, then I'll move the camera over to the seating stage and show you that in better detail. Okay, I think that's enough powder charging for you to see. It's a pretty straightforward process. Before I start dispensing powder, I calibrate the charge master light every single time. That way you know it's going to be throwing accurately. Then I just basically plug the charge in, set it to go, and it pumps them out. You just tip them in as you go. Okay, so I'll get the camera set up over at the seating process and I'll pick back up there. Okay, this is the seating process. Basically just sit the case in the Forster jaws, sit a projectile on top, the sleeve and the Forster seating die guides the projectile into the neck straight. I basically lower the ram or raise the ram and then usually leave it for 5 or so seconds, and that lets the compression forces seating the projectile against the powder in the case, because these are slightly compressed loads, basically lets that even out and gives you a more consistent seating depth. I can usually seat 1 to 2 projectiles while the RCBS charge master lights dispensing a charge behind me. I don't have to mark these as I've already found the load that I'm looking for. So now I'm just placing the rounds into an ammo box back over near the RCBS charge master light. And that's pretty much the end of my process. The only thing I do different is if I'm working up a load, I'll then mark each different type of load individually, and that way I can keep track of them while I'm shooting them at the range and then continue on with my note-taking process according to each type of load. Okay guys, I'm back with a couple of quick tips for anyone thinking about reloading for 300 Norma Magnum. Anyone who's reloaded anything in the 300 rum, 338 Lapua family of cases, anything like that go through about 80 to 95 grains of powder per shot, know that this thing absolutely chews powder. You'll only get roughly 80 to 85 rounds per half kilogram of powder. So in any American imperial measurement, where it's going to be sold per pound, you're going to get even less rounds per pound of your powder. It's very expensive. The ADI powder I'm using cost me roughly $65 for a half kilo. The other thing that I've got as a tip is anyone using quick load software. I have quick load. Do not trust the quick load data for the 300 Norma Magnum. It is drastically unsafe, and I mean every chart or every load that I've worked up so far with the different projectiles and the different powders, quick load hasn't even been within 5 grains of being close to what the maximum was. And I mean, it's estimating you can use 5 grains more powder than you actually can per shot. So that's a massive overpressure situation. If you're looking at 300 Norma Magnum, do some research on the internet. Sniper's Hide has lots of reloaders data on it. Again, don't take anything you read on the internet to be accurate. Work up your own load. But how I did it was I basically averaged out multiple people's data for their maximum loads, and then I worked back 10% off of that to find my starting load. Okay, so look for people using your same projectile. Make sure it's the 300 Norma Magnum, not the 300 Norma Improved Magnum. And then work back. Find an average maximum charge that people are running, and then deduct 10% from that, and that will be your starting charge. That's my advice. Because if you follow quick load data, it will get you into a lot of trouble.